Welcome to the Be Well podcast, wellness backed by science, bringing you inspiring conversations to help you on your wellness journey to a healthier, happier you. Brought to you by Breast Cancer UK. You can start your personal prevention journey right now by taking our prevention quiz. Just click on the link in the show notes.
Can you explain how our microbiome can impact our appetite as well as our metabolism?
Yeah, so it's interesting with a lot of the kind of the drugs out there that are getting a lot of press, you know, things that like Ozempic and what have you that target these particular receptor sites in the gut, like the GLP-1 receptor sites, but actually our microbes also impact on such receptor sites, and also things like our appetite hormones. So there's a regulatory effect in terms of like how the microbiome interacts with all of these hormones in our gut that then impacts on our satiety levels, which then has a knock-on effect to our weight.
What are some of the things that we can learn on an individual level about our bodies that helps us to make the right changes for our health?
I think there's this tendency to sort of outsource things or look at what other people are doing or check measurement tools, whether it's phones or watches or whatever, to give us data on ourselves. But I think I think there's a lot we can do subjectively as well, like just asking yourself, like, or looking at your own body in a way that, like, checking your poos in the morning and think it's after each meal being like, oh, how did I feel after that? And getting up in the morning and rating yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, like, how energized do I feel? So I think there's a lot of like just trying to connect with your body, really.
What are 3 foods that you cover in your books that are beneficial when it comes to our gut health? You can narrow it down to 3.
I mean, I probably would go more food groups, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So I would say, so definitely like plant-based foods and as colourful as possible, because the colour really is what kind of gives plants these polyphenol antioxidant benefits, and we know that polyphenols have a really important role in terms of helping to support a thriving, diverse microbiome. And then fibre-rich foods, because fibre is what feeds our microbes. So if we don't feed them fibre, then they're essentially starved. And then the last one, which kind of sort of links to my Polish heritage. My surname's Polish, is fermented foods. So I grew up on sauerkraut, and I actually think, honestly, after all those antibiotics that I had when I was younger, in some way, I'm sure, and I have no scientific evidence for this, but it did help my gut for sure.
And I'm so conscious of the difference, that regular movement. It's like oiling a machine, isn't it? And and the older you get, the more you need to just do that little kind of maintenance every day.
100%.
Yeah.
Mobility is something I'm talking about, just simple, quick flows where, like you said, we're oiling, there's synovial fluid around all the joints. So you're actually, by doing, you know, like full circles, by maybe using a resistance band, and I say do a shoulder floss or a belt or a band, you know, that you can lift your arms up and over. So you're actually getting your full rotation in the joints. That is going to loosen things up. And even for me, right, like now, I can feel the difference. Exercise makes you smarter. My title was Exercise for Sanity, Not Vanity.
That is clever. Yeah.
And growing your brain cells, and how this is going to help you in your exams and those stressful moments. And, you know, mental health, you know, if we think about children, that's a whole other demographic that we need to try and get these habits in. The earlier that we can, the better. And then social connection that I touched on, right? So it's not just exercise. We've got to try and think about all the other things that we can do and just make a start, because there is no guarantee in life.
No.
But, you know, what I hope you take away from this conversation is that there's a whole vast array of things that maybe, even if you just pick one a day, you know, have a snack size SMART goal, going back to my old project manager days, and just say to yourself, I'm going to go for a walk. You know, even if we were to just do 20 seconds of shadow boxing, like literally just, I get all ages, you know, just get some tin cans or just do them without any weights and just punch out in the air and just shuffle your feet, walk, jog, run on the spot, 20 seconds. I guarantee you're going to feel a little bit uplifted. You're going to feel a little bit less stressed, less anxious. The science is so incredible. I mean, it is showing, like I said, it's an antidepressant. I mean, I feel like if that was, you know, it's just a free drug, right? That we hopefully can get that ripple effect. Like once you start experiencing it, I think then you'll think, okay, I need that in my toolkit.
So why do you think we're so desperate to seek approval? And why do you think we're boring without alcohol?
Well, I think the first part is we are hardwired to people please. For my most recent book, I interviewed an evolutionary psychologist who said that it's such a basic psychological urge to seek approval of our tribe or community. It's next door to seeking shelter, food, a mate to procreate with, if that's what you want. So that's why we feel the urge to please the people at the party and have a drink when they're pressuring us to. Knowing why that's uncomfortable, because it is deeply uncomfortable when people are saying, oh, don't be boring, don't be a buzzkill, have a drink, and you're saying, no, I really don't want to. And that's why so often people fall back on excuses.
Why is non-drinking so often seen as a mark of shame rather than a badge of pride?
I mean, I will say, so I wrote that 10 years ago now, the mark of shame rather than a badge of pride. And I do think things are really changing around that. But I do still think something that hasn't shifted is the boring or smug or, health bore stigma that is attached to non-drinking. And another thing I'll say is that if it makes it easier for you to pretend that your tonic is a gin and tonic, or that you do have an early meeting the next day, or whatever it is, then make it as easy for yourself as possible.
But why is it that, celebrations are synonymous with alcohol? And how do we break that association? I mean, you mentioned that at every wedding, there's always going to be someone not drinking, but equally, there is that pressure to drink. And so how do we break that association?
Well, I think, again, it comes down to marketing. It has been the most amazing marketing campaign ever, that we think in order to toast a couple, we have to lift a glass of champagne. In order to wet a baby's head. I had one person ask me, if you have a baby, surely you will have some champagne to wet the baby's head. And I thought, this is the strangest thing I've ever been asked.
Yeah.
But people really just think that those social markers are impossible without alcohol.
There's literally cultures that cook with like fermented rice.
Yes.
We have a dish called panta bhat, which someone in Australia, by the way, has won MasterChef with that. Like,
really?
It was in the final. Sorry, I don't know. Yeah. So, and it was a fermented rice dish because that's what we do with leftover when they didn't have fridges back in the day. If you had rice from
work with that bacteria.
Exactly. Or you can use it in a dough of some sort. Like we have literally dosas and idlis like all over southern India with fermented rice and lentils. Actually, another thing I would encourage is if you buy a vegetable or a meat or a fish, whatever it is, don't use that one thing to make one dish. Like use parts of it.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes, even for the example of a cauliflower, you get a cauliflower, you'll be like, okay, you know what, I'll roast it. Then you have to eat roast cauliflower for like 4 days. You might not want to do that. So I think it's a way we cook at home is you kind of take a bit of that vegetable and you mix it with something else and then you have another half of it for another day.
Yeah. First of all, if there's too many ingredients or if you don't even know what they are and you couldn't find them in your cupboard, then don't do
if you
it.
naturally don't have those ingredients in your cupboard, you probably shouldn't really be eating it regularly, at least. Like, I think it's a thing to be said of just like reading what's on the packet.
Yeah.
And actually, I did this recently with I bought some hot cross buns. Just I think they were on offer, so I bought them. And then I actually didn't feel like eating them because I turned it around and there was actually, I don't even think there was flour in it. So I don't know what it was. There was like 35 ingredients. And these hot cross buns, and I was like, actually a bit put off.
Feeding yourself?
Yeah, because and also you won't get full because it's all chemicals.
Yes.
If you could give us a bit of an explanation around what endocrine disrupting chemicals are, and then maybe talk us through some of the culprits that we're concerned about and that you've looked at in your studies.
Endocrine disruptor chemicals are some of those exposures that I'm talking about that are chemical exposures. Endocrine disrupting chemicals do just as they say. They disrupt your natural hormonal system. So you can imagine that endocrine and hormone are synonyms of each other. You have your natural rhythm that's endogenous, that's inside of you. But once you start introducing exogenous hormone things that are mimicking your hormones, then you're going to have problems.
Where are they? You said, okay, personal care products, but, where generally are we finding these chemicals?
Well, you can think of, phthalates, when I said personal care products, if you see the word parfum on a bottle, that's typically phthalates. Those are considered like low molecular weight phthalates, but there's also these phthalates that are called high molecular weight phthalates. And these are commonly found in plastics. They're even found in IV tubing, like hospital IV tubing, which Breast Cancer Prevention Partners is working to campaign to get DEHP, this high molecular weight phthalate, out of the IV bags, because you can imagine if you're in NICU or going through chemo, you don't want this exogenous exposure.
Could reducing exposure, particularly early in life, could that mean that we actually reduce our risk of developing serious disease such as breast cancer, in your view?
In my view, yes. I will say that, this is a complex issue, but if you are considering what could you do as an individual, there's things you can't control. You can't necessarily control where you live and the air pollution that's in that location. You can't necessarily control if you have fresh produce in your neighborhood or your neighborhood's walkable. There's certain things like you can't structurally do anything about. I consider you being knowledgeable of the choices of what you bring into your home is something you can have control over.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Be Well podcast, brought to you by Breast Cancer UK, a prevention charity supporting people to build healthy, lifelong habits and reduce their risk of developing breast cancer. You can start your personal prevention journey right now by taking our prevention quiz. Just click on the link in the show notes.